Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today, again, is the first day of January 2023, and I'm going to be doing another section tonight. That is from the book called Redemption Manual 4.5, and we're going to deal with other things as I just concluded another broadcast tonight about how so much that we think is actually legal or we think's the law about doing with a lawyer is pretty much non-existent. So my channel is simply Discerning What is True, and we're going to go back into Redemption 4.5, and we're going to start with what we call the short essay on the law. This is based upon Babylon and Roman empires. Okay. The ancient kings and rulers of the Middle East governed the populace for thousands of years through what they called city-states, where each city and the surrounding areas was a state and unto itself. Independent of the other city-states, many conflicts and battles between the city-states took place because of the continual disagreements with the boundary lines between themselves, in order to keep the people and their land under their control for commerce and taxation. This is where the term citizen came from. Roman rulers continued to use the term as they conquered each territory by declaring, "You're a citizen of Rome." And since the people did not want to fight the Romans, they acquiesced, and thus they were verbally contracted under Roman rule. The hierarchy of law. The first order of law is natural law. These are the supreme creator pillars of universal law and in principle which so necessarily agrees with nature and state of man. Without observing their inherited maxims, the peace and happiness of any society as a social compact can never be preserved. Knowledge of natural law may be attained merely by the light of reason from the facts of their essential agreeableness with the constitutional moral entities in nature. Natural law exists regardless of whether it is enacted as positive law or regarded as in any other light whatsoever, or cloaked in darkness by whomever or by whatever means. When law began to emerge into any moral entity consciousness through thoughts, words, and deeds, the next order of law on this planet or universe was begun. The most fundamental law of all is the moral law, has to do with survival, which is a universal principle. This is something that people need to sit down and read because our whole society in the West is completely coming apart. I'm adding that. It has to do with moral interactions of any kind, be it relationships of buying, selling, or trading, or relating in any way. It is based upon treating or dealing with others the way that you would like to be treated or dealt with. This is known as the true law of commerce. The law of commerce has been in operation since man interacted with each other starting many thousands of years ago through the recorded antiquity of the Sumerian Babylonian era, where commercial law was codified and enforced. Ancient artifacts dating over 6,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, revealed that the system was so complex it even included receipts, coin money, shopping lists, manifestos, and a postal system, with the medium being baked clay. As a derivative of law of commerce being removed from natural law and therefore inferior is common law, that is, co together plus munis service, comma gift, comma exchange, to exchange together. This emerged basically in England out of disputes over a portion of the earth in allodium, that is, allodium meaning a sovereign ownership of land, and it was allegedly based on common sense. So common law is the law of the earth, governed the exchange of soil. Common law gave rise to a jury system and many writs and processes which governments have absorbed, sectorized, and made into rules and regulations possessed in such courts. Common law procedures were based on the opposition to face your accuser or injured party in front of witnesses to sort out the problem directly. This process was never intended to include lawyers, attorneys, or judges construing their own law, as these titles are all based upon allegiance of representation, which can never be the real thing. Remember that the word here, representation, is to represent, just like you have the House of Representatives. Again, that word is representing. In reality, they're not truly present. Because conflicts of interest generally begins over the settling of the court and recognition of parties to the cause of action, there often arises many disputes over conflicts or undisclosed conflicts, that is. It is no wonder there is confusion. As a rule of thumb, the process often mimics the games of the Colosseum. Wow. After common law came those governments which arose around these customs and uses, their laws and legislative regulations ad infinitum, such as these or those, which gave rise to their various city-states, kingdoms, and so-called organic republics. The only laws that these social compacts can create are those that allow commerce to flow more efficiently within their social compact. The only law the so-called agency central government known as the United States of America could create was to allow commerce to flow more efficiently between the social compact parties known as states. It was never intended to regulate the sovereign people of Earth who created the social compact. You get that? It was never intended to regulate the sovereign people of Earth who created the social compact. The true sovereigns exercising their political rights, which are superior to all civil rights of the common citizen. Below that, the garbage froth, F-R-O-T-H, more or less is politics and the private copyright common company policy of foreign corporations, such as the military social construct known as the United States in all caps, the state of so-and-so in all caps, the county of so-and-so is all caps, the city of so-and-so is all caps, etc. The purpose of these municipalities, as municipal service, give, exchange, plus capere, C-A-P-E-R-E, to take service in exchange, is to govern fictitious entities such as John Doe and Kmart, both being all caps, not to regulate people. Remember back when you thought that you were John Doe, that is all caps, because that is how it's written on the fictitious driver's license in commerce. One of our problems here is that when we engage with agencies, that agent government, municipalities, and other such elements in all our dealings in the law, we have been conditioned to interact on in their, all caps, their level, subject of the corporation as a sub-corporation, franchised and registered. We have never risen to the level where the base of the law is. Yes, I see what he's saying here. We've already put ourselves underneath them, you see. Here, the reality, the power, the solidity, and preeminence is this: the sovereign level, which is in all caps. But now we can function in this powerful letter. This is a checkmate. This is the end of the game. This is the remedy. Commercial law. This phrase designates the whole body of substantiate jurisprudence, i.e. the Uniform Commercial Code, the Truth in Lending Act, applicable to the rights intercourse of persons engaged in commerce, trade, or mercantile pursuits, based upon Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. Commercial law maintains the commercial harmony, integrity, and continuality of society. It also states to maintain the peace and dignity of the state. Over the millennia, these principles have been discovered through experience and distilled and codified into those 10 fundamental maxims listed above. There is no legal issue or dispute possible which is not a function of one or more of these principles. The entity of world commerce now functions in accordance with the Uniform Commercial Code, that is the UCC, the so-called military social contract, known as the United States in all caps corporation version of the law of commerce. The Uniform Commercial Code, that is the next section, is the National Conference of Commissionaries on Uniform State Laws, together with the American Law Institute, drafted so-called nationwide uniform laws. Each corporate so-called state has now adopted these laws. These laws govern commercial transactions, including sales and leased goods, transfer of funds, commercial paper, bank deposits and collections, letter of credit, bulk transfers, warehouse receipts, bill of lading, investment securities, and secure transaction. The UCC has been adopted in whole or substantially by all states. This is based upon Black's Law Dictionary, the 6th edition. The UCC, in all caps, is a code of laws governing various commercial transactions, that is, the sale of goods, banking transactions, secure transactions in personal property, and other matters. That was designed to bring uniformity in these areas of the law of the various states, and that has been adopted with some modifications in all states, including the District of Columbia and the Virgin Islands. This is based upon Barron's, B-A-R-R-O-N, Law Dictionary, the 3rd edition. Unless displaced by a particular provision of this code, the principles of law and equity, including the law merchant and the law relative to capacity to contract, principal and agent, estoppel, fraud, misrepresentation, duress, coercion, mistake, bankruptcy, or other validating or invalidating cause shall supplement its process, its provisions. This is based upon UCC 1-103. To paraphrase the third definition above, the UCC is the supreme law on the planet, and all other forms of law are encompassed by it and included in it, except you as a sovereign. I'll say that again to you so you can understand what's going on here. To paraphrase the third definition above, the UCC is the supreme law on the planet, and all other forms of law are encompassed by it and included in it, except you as a sovereign, of course. See, so you volunteer, you put yourself in there. He was not a part of that. Pennsylvania was the first state to adopt it in UCC in July 1954. Louisiana was the last state, January 1st, 1975. The following is a quote from the Bank Officer's Handbook of Commercial Banking Laws within the United States, 6th edition, paragraph 22.01, in parentheses 1, and pertains to certain types of transactions. These are 12 transactions to which the UCC does not apply. They are as following. Okay. Security interests governed by federal statutes. Number 2, landlord liens. 3, liens for service or material provided. 4, assignment for claims for wages. 5, transfers by government agencies. 6, certain isolated sales of accounts or chattel paper. 7, insurance policies. 8, judgments. 9, rights of set-off, that is to see set-off. 10, real estate interests. 11, tort claims. 12, bank accounts. The UCC-104 states construction against implicit repeal. This code being a general act intended as a unified coverage of the subject matter, no part of it shall be deemed to be implied repeal by subsequent legislation, such construction be reasonably avoided. Nothing in the UCC has ever been repealed, nor can it ever be, no matter if any jurisdiction chooses to declare it so, because it is founded upon the supreme creative pillars of universal law. In the events of conflict between a deleted section and a current section, deleted section controls. If this is examined, one will see that it cannot be the other way. Potentiality countless commercial transactions can be consummated based on the current UCC at any time. To cancel any portions of the UCC at a later point is to throw into upheaval and chaos all commercial agreements that were based on the deleted portion. That act will carry unimaginable astronomical liability to the many actors who attempt to affect such change. Okay, we're going to enter another section here, so I want to check the time phrase here again. So we're at 13:55. So we're going to go in a different section here, which is going to become the meat of what I would call the particular section. This section is section 3, and this section 3 is named sovereignty. So this section is called Sovereignty of the People. While the relationship between man and social compact known by many names, to name but a few, i.e., that is alliance, empire, kingdom, nation, organization, confederation, and state has been a hotly debated topic throughout known history. Little has changed over time in their relationship except for the means used to control the alien masses of such compacts. The man on the street still exclaims, "But what can I do?" The power brokers continue to manipulate the world stage from behind the scenes using every technological and dirty trick at their disposal to maintain their tight-fisted control over the alien masses that appear. Despite much complaining, unable unable or unwilling to assert their authority to emerge into any other political status freely determined by the people for their own safety. Liberty and pursuit of happiness. Since the reasons for this so-called state of affairs are numerous and complex, we will focus on exploring those issues most central to the subject of sovereignty of all people in this short essay. The history of the word sovereign may be traced from the past up to the present through its many forms, that is, super, S-U-P-E-R, Latin, meaning above. Next one is S-U-P-R-A-N-U-S, meaning Old French from Vulgar Latin. And sovereign is Middle East, Middle English. There is some speculation that one of the English monarchs modified sovereign so that it would include the words reign, R-E-I-G-N, result in the present form. Most people equate sovereignty with justice, freedom, and liberty. By liberty, we mean the assurance that every man shall be protected in doing what he believes to be his duty against the influences of authority and majorities, customs, and opinions. By justice, we mean the machinery to protect one while exercising these principles. And by freedom, we mean the exercise of liberty from such machinery of justice to accomplish the outcome of all three conditions of sovereignty within the framework of the frame of equality for all people. Ultimately, the sovereignty enjoyed by a people is determined by the price, that is the sacrifice that they are singularly, jointly, and severally collectively willing to pay as pledged to ensure their enjoyment of such. And this itself is dependent on their education, their identity, their perception, their responsibility, and the access to a free flow of unmanaged information, and the balance of power between the majority and the minorities that seek to control them within the framework of the social compact which people construct for the enjoyment of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the signatory members and their posterity of such compact. When the forces of control operate in secrecy, the effect on private liberty has always been catastrophically. Everything secret degenerates, even the administration of justice. Nothing is safe that does not show how it can bear discussion and publicity. If such discussion and publicity is for the greater good of the whole, appertaining to the signatories and posterity thereof. The fate of every social order based on sovereignty of the people depends on the choices it makes between these opposite principles: absolute power on the one hand, and on the other, the restraints of morals and tradition within such compact that creates a society for the exercise of such sovereignty of people. It is inarguably that men are the creators, that is, the constructs of social order. So it follows that man is indeed sovereign over his creations. It is also inarguably that the word substitutes for social orders like the state or the so-called government are really just convenient abstractions that are entirely without reference. There is no person or thing that can be ascribed to these linguistic expressions. Man is the state, lest we forget that. And finally, all social order has the higher value than anarchy. It's paramount to peaceful and productive social relations. As long as men have disputes, some forum sanctioned by morals and tradition will likely be formed to resolve them as a preferably alternate to war. Given the assumptions of the preceding paragraph, the sovereignty of man over government, the necessity of social order, and the resolutions of disputes, the sovereignty of people. This then reduces to the problem of how to set up a social order that will, over time, prevent this hierarchy of power from becoming inverted, where the arbitrary whims of the few subvert the freedoms of the many. The most certain test by which people judge whether a compact is really free is the amount of security enjoyed by all touching upon their contractual nexus as appertaining to safety, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness within the social compact. The condition of whether or not minorities exist within the framework of a social compact reflects the nature of a true equality of each person, or each people, I should say, to one another. If the sovereignty of each people is to be guarded by the principle of equality for all sovereigns, then the concept of minorities and/or degradation the Gradation, or by any of the social compact members towards one another would be a breach of the sovereignty of any one people at the cost of the sovereignty of all people. So in other words, if one person is done wrongly, it has effect upon all of us. So for true sovereignty to exist for all people, the idea of a minority within any framework of a social compact where peaceful sovereignty exists for all people would be non-existent, where in this respect could be or would be allowed in public display. Sovereignty is destroyed for that people, and injury has occurred against the peace and dignity of all. This does not mean that if such a person calls any member of a social compact to react to the deeds of one or another, which may appear to be categorized in some manner of expression, which under similar conditions would be considered a breach of peace, but goes on to say that such expression has been brought to the public attention due to the actions of another, which may or may not disrespect one people or all people, depending upon the nature of the acts of expression, and whether such could be considered to deliver a message of respect or disrespect towards one another. All actions of the social compact, individually, jointly, and severally, must be guided by the principles of the social compact concerning dignity for the innocent when deciding whether or not a particular action shall be allowed or curtailed for the benefit of all by measuring the social redeeming qualities of any action within the framework of the social compact for the safety, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all sovereign people. At one point in a private discussion with some liberal-minded folks regarding sovereignty, someone is in attendance to say, "We are all sovereign. People are free to discuss any topic people like, and people come and go as all people please." Does this sound like something that you or a friend might say? Let's see how true that this might be by exploring our alleged status as free men and women, that is, gentlemen and ladies, guaranteed by the Bills of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution of the United States of America. Objectively, we will require that we examine our assumptions and understand something about the nature of the techniques and politics of control. So let's say that you were really an evil person and you wanted to control a group of people, that is a large group or a small one, without having to constantly fight to maintain control. How might you approach this? Logic dictates that you could accomplish such a goal by changing things incrementally in such a way that they were barely noticeable, all the while maintaining appearance to be the same until one day everything was inverted and you had eaten out of all substance. In this way, you could carry out your plans for a conquest without calling attention to yourself by building a prison without bars, by controlling their minds. Your evil would be manageable as long as your game plan stayed hidden, was tolerated by the majority, and the worst aspects of the abusers remained hidden from plain view. You could accomplish this by hiding your identity behind multiple levels of corporations, many levels of agents, some whispering in the ears of employers of your mother corporation, such as presidents, Supreme Court justices, congressmen, and senators. You might even make some of your corporations appear to be attached to your mother federal corporation, like the Federal Reserve and the Internal Revenue Service, which most people think are actually the government, which is not. Case in point, a quiet, bloodless revolution was carried out on the soil of the so-called North America in the early 1930s, so sophisticated in its planning and so flawless in its execution that over 7 years later, the majority of so-called Americans are still unaware that it has even occurred. It remained the standard for techniques in revolution. Read People's Pottage, P-O-T-T-A-G-E, by Garrett, G-A-R-R-E-T-T. His last name is, I guess, the same thing as Garrett, G-A-R-E-T. In fact, some still honor some of its perpetrators as so-called American heroes. Yeah, sure they do. It was the largest theft in world's history. All property, biological and physical, including our labor, was pledged to the invading army. The nature of the conspiracy to fraud all people may be gleaned from studying the following comments quoted from a meeting between Mr. Woodrow Wilson and Colonel Edward Mandell House, that is based upon 1920. House, who some researchers speculate was the voice behind so-called President Mr. Woodrow Wilson, was one of the major conspirators in the triumph of establishing the Federal Reserve System. His book, Philip Drew, The Administrator, was disguised as a novel to dupe the masses. It was the blueprint for the radical socialist revolution that enslaved the military social contract known as the United States during Mr. Woodrow Wilson and Mr. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's so-called presidencies. So here we go. Very soon, every American will be required to register biological property, that is their human body. This is all from this particular book from Philip Drew Administrator, in a national system designated to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel a people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency based upon Federal Reserve notes. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being able to earn a living, the beast number, that is. They will be our chattel, and we will hold security interests over them forever by operation of the law merchant, Lex Mercatory, under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering their bills of lading, that is the birth certificate, to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, exchanging your energy for worthless debt instruments, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation, secured by their prejudice, that is your Social Security card. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value, that is the straw man, designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could not figure out our plans. And if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund the government, by floating liens and debts to the registrars in the forms of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur. And in this matter, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. This above comment was actually written by QUI TAM, T-A-M, as reality shock treatment, but it is what they are doing today. So I was wrong. I thought it's from the Philip Drew's book, but I'm wrong. Now, with regards to your rights, or are they privileges? Ask yourself, how is it that you came to believe that you were party to a contract, to any social compact, to claim such rights under such contract? Were you introduced to stories about the so-called founding fathers and showed various depictions of them standing around at the signing of these contracts? Were you told how they fought for freedom for you and all your posterity? Well, suppose that someone were to write a social contract and call it a constitution with a group of my friends and send it to you with the claim that it is now the law of the land, that it makes you free and that you and your family must abide by it or face censure or as traitors, as enemies of our created social compact of states, or whatever we choose to call the various jurisdiction or forms established to carry out the intent of the parties to the compact known as the Constitution. What would your reaction to that scrap of paper be? Does it make sense that you would be bound to that little agreement, even if you were not party to the private discussion that led to its creation, or as at least gave you consent and signature to it? Is it possible that people outside such social compacts which created such constitution are free in their safety and liberty and pursuit of happiness, even if so-called constitutions do not exist? Did you know that the so-called Constitution of the United States for the United States of America was incorporated into bylaws of the United States located in the District of Columbia when it was incorporated in 1871? Did you know that the 13th, 14th, and 16th amendments were fraudulently enacted, and that this fraud renders the entire contract invalid on its face, but illicitly taught to be applicable to the sovereign people, when in fact it operates only as all the employees of the corporation? Do you see now why the so-called president routinely legislate outside the restrictions of their corporate constitution? If any part of the contract is found to be fraudulent, the entire document is dishonored. Yeah, I have a book that's written by authors here that the 14th and 16th Amendment was never really truly ratified. Now, the 13th would be one I don't have, but that's just to give you an idea. That was done by, actually, it was done by a gentleman who helped with this particular guy, which was Al Benson Jr. Helped with this writing this book here, Lincoln's Marches. Continued. Those who have more power are liable to sin more. Did you get that? Let me say it again. Those who have more power are liable to sin more, though no theorem in geometry, no theorem in geometry is more certain than this. We have reached a state in which everything has been inverted. The majority suspect that there is something terribly wrong with the concept or idea of a social compact of governments, as we are taught exists in public schools, and the application of which we are taught bears out difference in everyday application as the exercise of those teachings. But on the whole, they do not really want to deal with the evil that lurks them. They are content to live their lives from day to day, buffered by the distractions that define their existence. This is the mentality of the slave, not a sovereign people, who are capable of correcting, abolishing, or creating a solution to their condition, not only for their benefit, but also for their posterity. The unwillingness to act the unwillingness to act is the mentality of people who do not care about the world their progenies will inherit, their children will inherit. This is the mentality of extreme selfishness, dedication to personal comfort above all else. This does not go unnoticed by the controllers who view this as a sign of acceptance that they can ratchet the dice a few more turns. There is no sovereignty where people have fallen prey to the mind control agenda of the men who rule from the shadows. There is no sovereignty for people who will not bargain for their rights. There is no sovereignty for people who lack the courage to face evil and stare it down. To think that you have sovereignty while nurturing these things is to live in a fantasy where you can be free. It is imperative that you come to understand how you are currently being controlled. When King Louis the 14th of the social pact known as the Kingdom of France was asked where he got the power to assert his authority, he declared, "I am the state." King Louis XIV, knew a secret that the majority of the sovereign people who wish or think that they are free hadn't yet discovered. That sovereignty must be asserted. There is no fence sitting when it comes to sovereignty. If you are not willing to self-govern in a form acceptable to the international public order by creating a social compact for your safety, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and the benefit of your posterity, you surely will be claimed by those who will. You only have the rights that you have bargained for contractually. If you were not a party to the social compact and contract by signature, you only have the privileges that those who did bargain are willing to extend to you. There are no imaginary jurisdictions on this planet, and you are not party to any of the contracts that you learned about in the history lessons. If you're laboring under the common misperception that you are party to a contract that you never signed or bargained for, such as the so-called Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, or the Bill of Rights, you have been deceived. But then, without this assumption, their control and the matrix over you would begin to unravel. If you believe that you are a beneficiary of the trust your so-called forefathers created, then as such, you are accepting the benefits of the federal corporation and are subject to their rules, status, and it's a no-win situation. So I'm going to stop there tonight. That concludes that particular chapter. The next chapter we'll go into is on the subject of sovereignty. I see what time frame we're looking at here. We're looking at 33 minutes and 47 seconds. So I really don't want to go. I've gone through a lot of this book already, and I've gone through over an hour. And usually people are not. It seems like I find it thrilling. I really do. I enjoy this, but because I'm learning something. But a lot of times people don't have an hour to sit, so to speak. But this is why it's being put on my YouTube channel and also on Facebook. And so you can find it. And you can find it on simply my YouTube channel, Discerning What Is True. And I've done here recently probably over 20, if not more, videos in the last 2 weeks because I feel like it's impertinent to get this out there because we're really actually, we're at the end game here, folks. It's getting dark. And it's been going dark here for the last 2 years. This is the third year, actually, that is with the whole democracy of this craziness from 2020. So I will continue to put these videos out. I'll probably do another one after this one, since it's actually 10:15. I might do another 30-minute one, and then I'll weigh into the night. So I appreciate you being here and listening. Give me a few minutes, and then I will start this particular chapter again, and we'll go from there. Okay? Thank you for being here. Again, take care. Have a great day tomorrow.